It all began with a single text from my son, Steve. "Mom, family meeting at our place tonight, 7 p.m., important." No greeting, no explanation, just that one message, the kind that makes your stomach twist because you already know it's not good news. In our family, meetings usually meant drama, especially when my daughter-in-law, Olivia, was behind them. In the 8 years since marrying Steve, she'd perfected the art of smiling while quietly steering every conversation to her advantage. When I pulled into their driveway that evening, the house was already surrounded by cars. My younger son David's sedan, my sister-in-law Nancy's SUV, even my brother Mark's old truck. Whatever this was, it involved everyone. Everyone except Emma, my 19-year-old granddaughter and the only child of my late son, Michael. Her absence was impossible to ignore. Olivia opened the door before I could even knock, wine glass in hand and that polished smile on her face. "Melissa, you're finally here," she said, like I was late. My watch read exactly 7 p.m. The living room looked like a courtroom, chairs arranged in a semicircle, all facing the sofa where I was clearly meant to sit. Steve paced near the fireplace, looking like a man who didn't want to be there. "Thanks for coming, Mom," he muttered, barely meeting my eyes. Before I could respond, Olivia stepped forward, perfectly in charge. "Melissa," she began in that tone she saves for me, sweet on the surface, sharp underneath. "We called this meeting to talk about the farm. My farm, 60 acres of Tennessee hills that have been in my family for 3 generations. The land where I buried my husband, James, 5 years ago, right beside the old oak tree where we shared our first kiss as teenagers." "What about it?" I asked, though my heart already knew where this was going. "We think it's time you sold it," Olivia said, as if announcing the weather. "It's too much for a woman your age to handle alone. And honestly, the family could really use the money." I felt the air leave my lungs. "The family?" I asked quietly. "Or you, Olivia?" Steve jumped in, always trying to smooth things over. "Mom, please, we're just worried about you. You're 63, living out there by yourself?" I cut him off. "I've managed that land perfectly fine for the last 5 years since your father passed, and the 40 years before that while we built it together." Olivia's smile tightened. "This isn't about your abilities, Melissa. It's about being practical. That property's worth over $2 million just sitting there. Steve and I could use it to expand our business, and David's struggling with his mortgage. There are real needs here." I looked around. Even my brother shifted in his seat, uneasy. "So she told you I've been struggling with the upkeep?" I asked, eyes locked on Olivia. "When exactly did I say that?" Silence. Then David spoke up softly. "Mom, no one's trying to pressure you. We just think—" "Stop saying we," I interrupted. "Who exactly is we? Because I don't see Emma here. Or was my granddaughter not invited to this little family meeting?" Nancy cleared her throat. "Melissa, she's in college. She doesn't need to worry about finances right now." "Finances about my property?" I stood up, surprising even myself with how calm I sounded. "Let's make one thing clear. The farm isn't for sale. Not now, not ever." Olivia's smile vanished. "Melissa, stop being so stubborn. We need that money. The family needs it. You're holding onto a massive piece of land out of— what, nostalgia?" That word, stubborn, hit like a slap. After everything I'd done for this family, after raising 3 boys mostly on my own while James worked double shifts, after nursing him through his illness, after supporting Steve through every failure, every restart, now I was the selfish one. I looked at every face in that room and finally saw it for what it was, a setup. A well-planned ambush led by Olivia. "You want to talk about the farm?" I said, voice steady. "Fine, let's talk about it. That land has been in my family since my grandfather cleared it by hand in 1932. Your father and I paid off the last mortgage by working until our bones ached. And yes, I've already made arrangements for what happens when I'm gone." Olivia's eyes sharpened. "What kind of arrangements?" I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded document I'd brought just in case. Something told me I'd need it tonight. "My will is finalized," I said. "The farm goes directly to Emma." The room went still. For once, Olivia had nothing to say. Steve's face turned pale. Olivia's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Emma?" she finally stammered. "Michael's daughter? But what about Steve? What about your living sons?" I stood up, and for the first time in years I felt strong. "I suggest you all go home," I said quietly, "and think very carefully about what just happened here tonight. And Olivia, next time you decide to hold a family meeting about my property, you might want to invite the actual heir." As I walked out, voices erupted behind me, raised, angry, desperate, but I didn't turn back. Not this time. For once, I wasn't going to smooth things over. I just kept walking straight to my car, the night air cool against my skin, the gravel crunching beneath my boots. The farmhouse was silent when I arrived, just as it had been for the past 60 years. The porch light spilled a soft glow over the weathered boards that James himself had replaced the summer before he got sick. I sat in my car for a long moment, gripping the steering wheel, letting the tears fall that I refused to show in front of them. Selfish. That word echoed in my head like a cruel whisper. Inside, I kicked off my shoes and went straight to James's old desk, polished mahogany, still perfectly organized, bills in one corner. Farm records neatly stacked in the drawer, and in the bottom, locked drawer, the one that held our life's proof, I used the small key I wore around my neck. Out came the worn leather folder James had given me on our 30th anniversary. Inside were the papers that told our story. Decades of hard work, loss, and triumph. The original deed my grandfather received, the mortgage documents with years of handwritten payment notes, receipts from the time we somehow scraped together enough to buy the adjoining 20 acres, when I was pregnant with Michael. My fingers brushed over James's handwriting on the edge of one page. Paid in full. May 12th, 1998. We did it, Mel. This land is ours. Forever. Forever. That was our promise. The phone's sudden ring cut through the silence. I glanced at the caller ID. Steve. I let it ring out. Then David. Then Steve again. I wasn't ready to hear excuses. Or worse, more arguments. When the phone rang a fourth time, I finally answered. "Melissa, it's Emma. Are you okay?" My sweet Emma, Michael's daughter, the one who had her father's calm voice and kind heart. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I said softly. "It's just been a long day." "Uncle Steve called me," she said hesitantly. He was, acting strange, asking if you'd mentioned the farm lately. So it had already begun, the quiet campaign to undo my decision. "Did he mention the meeting tonight?" I asked. "No," she said. "What happened?" "Nothing you need to worry about, honey," I sighed. "How are your classes going?" She let me change the subject. We talked about her biology major, her part-time job at the campus garden center. Emma always loved growing things, just like her grandfather, just like me. After we hung up, I stepped onto the porch and looked out over the moonlit fields, the same fields where James and I once dreamed about the future, where Michael learned to run, where Steve built forts and David caught his first fish in the pond. The memory of little Steve, proudly holding up that tiny sunfish, collided with the image of him tonight, standing silently beside his wife. How did we come to this? My phone buzzed again. A text from Steve. "Mom, we need to talk. Olivia didn't mean to upset you. She's just trying to help the family." I didn't reply. Sleep never came that night. When the first light of dawn crept across the horizon, I did what I've always done when life felt heavy. I put on my work boots and headed out to check the fences. The rhythm of mending and moving had always been my way to clear my thoughts. That's when I saw it. A sleek SUV making its way up the dirt driveway. The kind of car that looked out of place on a farm road. Olivia stepped out, dressed in designer jeans and a silk blouse, her heels sinking slightly into the soft earth. She looked around as if the land itself made her uncomfortable. "Melissa," she called, walking carefully toward me. "I thought we could talk. Woman to woman." I kept hammering at the loose post. "I think you said enough last night." She stopped a few feet away, folding her arms. I wanted to apologize. We should have handled things differently. You mean, I said quietly, you should have been more subtle about trying to take my home? Her smile tightened. That's not fair. We're family. We're just trying to help and handle some pressing matters. I finally set down the hammer and turned to face her. Pressing matters? What matters, Olivia? Steve's business is doing fine. David's job pays well. So, tell me, what's this really about? Something flickered in her eyes. I could see something flicker behind Olivia's calm exterior. Irritation, maybe even fear. The business isn't doing as well as you think, she finally said. We've had to take out loans, and there's an opportunity to expand, but we need capital. So, I replied, get a business loan. That's what banks are for. Her eyes darted away. We've already borrowed as much as we can, and honestly, it doesn't make sense for you to hold on to this huge property when the money could help all of us. All of us, I repeated quietly. Or just you and Steve. Her expression hardened, the polished mask starting to crack. Don't act like you don't have favorites, she snapped. Everyone knows Emma's your golden child, even though she's barely family anymore. That hit deep, not because it was true, but because it was cruel. I felt a rush of anger so sharp it took my breath away. Emma is my granddaughter, I said firmly. Michael's daughter. She will always be family. Olivia's tone sharpened. And what about your other sons? Don't they deserve something too? Steve has stood by you for years, and this is how you repay him? I picked up my tools and turned away. I think you should leave. We're not finished discussing this, she pressed, following me toward the barn. Yes, we are. I turned to face her. And Olivia, I know about the gambling debts. Her face drained of color. What are you talking about? James's cousin Marcus works at the Grand Casino in Tunica, I said. He called me 3 months ago, worried about how much you'd been losing. Said you were there nearly every weekend since Christmas. She took a step back as if struck. That's personal. Nothing stays personal in a small town, I said evenly. Is that what this is really about? You need my farm to pay off your debts before Steve finds out? Her silence was answer enough. The truth sat between us like a stone. You don't understand, she whispered, her confident tone finally cracking. If Steve finds out, then maybe, I interrupted, you should start being honest with him, instead of organizing family meetings to pressure me into selling my home. Just then, the distant hum of an engine broke the moment. Steve's truck appeared at the end of the drive, dust rising behind it. Mom! He called out as he stepped out of the cab. I've been calling you all night. Olivia instantly regained her composure, slipping the mask back on like it had never fallen. Your wife and I were just having a chat, I said evenly, about family priorities and about honesty. Steve glanced between us, frowning. What's going on? Nothing important, Olivia said quickly, looping her arm through his. Her voice was syrup-sweet again. I just came to smooth things over after last night, but your mother isn't being very receptive. Steve looked at me with concern. Mom, we're just trying to help. You can't keep shutting us out. I stared at him, my son, the same boy who once ran through these fields with scraped knees and big dreams, and realized something painful. This wasn't just about land anymore. It was about saving what was left of our family before the greed and deceit growing within it destroyed everything we'd built. I'm not shutting you out, Steve, I said quietly. I'm standing my ground. There's a difference. As they drove away, I stood there watching the dust settle behind their truck. The sun was setting over the fields that had survived droughts, floods, and every kind of storm. And I knew, if this land could endure all that, then so could I. 2 weeks passed. The tension that started at that family meeting spread like wildfire. Steve's usual Sunday visits turned into short, strained phone calls. David tried to stay neutral, but I could hear the pressure in his voice. And Steve's 2 boys, my grandsons, hadn't come by since that night. Their absence left a quiet ache that followed me everywhere. I was kneeling in the garden, pulling weeds from between the tomato plants, when Nancy's car turned up the drive. James's sister, kind-hearted but always too eager to please everyone, stepped out, clutching her purse like a lifeline. "Thought I'd stop by," she said, forcing a bright smile. "Just wanted to see how you're doing." I brushed the dirt from my hands. "I'm fine, Nancy. Come in for some tea?" In the kitchen, she sat at the table, fingers trembling around her cup. "Melissa," she began, avoiding my eyes, "everyone's worried about you." "Everyone?" I asked softly. "Or Olivia?" Nancy sighed. "You know how family is. We just want what's best for everyone." "And selling my home is what's best for everyone?" I set my cup down a little too hard. Tea sloshed over the rim. "Nancy, this isn't just land. This is my life." "I know," she said quietly. "But—" She hesitated, her voice faltering. "Steve says you've been isolating yourself, and there are concerns about, well, about your decision-making." I froze. "My decision-making?" Nancy's eyes darted down. "Olivia mentioned that you've been acting erratic, making sudden changes to your will, accusing people of things. And there it was, her plan. If she couldn't get the farm through persuasion, she'd try to take it by making me look unstable." "Nancy," I said firmly, leaning forward, "look at me. Do I seem erratic to you? Do I seem unstable?" She fidgeted, unable to meet my gaze. "No, but you know how stories spread." "Stories," I repeated. "Right. Stories that she started." Nancy didn't answer. "It's not that simple, Melissa," she whispered, but I could already see how simple it really was. "Steve's worried," Nancy said gently. "He thinks you've been pulling away ever since James passed, and now, with this whole will situation—" I stood up, suddenly exhausted. "My husband died, Nancy. I grieved. That doesn't make me unstable." She looked away, murmured something about family, then left soon after. The moment the door closed, I picked up the phone and called my lawyer, Martha Ellis. We'd been friends since high school. She'd handled every legal matter for our family since the day James and I bought the farm. After hearing everything, Martha didn't sound surprised. "They're preparing to challenge the will," she said calmly. "Classic strategy, make you look isolated, question your capacity to make decisions, claim undue influence, but don't worry. We've documented every signature, every change, every meeting." Her words should have reassured me. Instead, they sank like stones in my chest, my own family, plotting against me. That evening, as the sun slipped behind the hills, a small silver car rolled up the driveway. For a moment I didn't recognize it until Emma stepped out. Her long brown hair was tied back, and for a second it felt like seeing Michael again, walking toward me with that same quiet determination. "Grandma!" she called, rushing up the porch steps. The moment she hugged me, all the walls I'd built in the past few months started to crumble. She smelled of sunshine and the same coconut shampoo she'd used since she was a teenager. "Emma, shouldn't you be at school?" "Spring break?" she smiled, sitting beside me on the porch swing. "And I needed to see you." Something in her voice made my stomach tighten. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" She hesitated, biting her lip the way she used to when she was little and trying not to cry. "Uncle Steve called me," she said quietly. "He said you're not doing well, that you've been making strange decisions about the farm." My heart sank. So they'd gone to Emma, too. "Did he mention what decisions?" She nodded. "He said you're giving the farm to me instead of him and Uncle David. Is that true?" I took her hand, the same calloused hand that worked the soil at her university's garden center. "Yes, but that wasn't a new choice. I made that decision after your father passed." "But why me?" she whispered. "Not that I'm not grateful, but Uncle Steve thinks it's unfair." "Your father loved this land as deeply as I do," I said softly. "It was meant to be his, and after him, yours. That's always been the plan since the day you were born. Losing him didn't change that for me." A tear rolled down her cheek. "I miss him so much sometimes." "I know, sweetheart," I said, brushing her hair back. "Me too." We sat quietly as the porch swing creaked, watching the sky turn gold. Then she said, "Uncle Steve told me Aunt Olivia thinks you should move into town somewhere smaller." I stiffened. "And what do you think?" She gazed across the fields. "I think this is your home," she said firmly. Then, after a pause, "And I think Aunt Olivia has always wanted your things. She used to tell Mom that you had family heirlooms that should belong to her since she married into the family." My heart skipped. "When was this?" "Before Dad died," she said. "Mom didn't like talking about it, but I overheard them arguing once. Aunt Olivia wanted Grandma's silver set from the china cabinet." Pieces began to fall into place. Olivia's careful patience, her years of waiting for the right moment to strike. "Grandma, are you in trouble?" Emma asked, her voice small. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. "Not trouble exactly," I said, "just standing my ground. But it means the world that you came." She stayed through the weekend, helping me with spring planting, listening to old stories about her father, filling the house with laughter that had been missing for too long. When she left Sunday afternoon, the silence that followed was heavy, but so was my resolve. I knew the fight ahead would be brutal, but now I wasn't alone. That evening the phone rang. "Steve, you involved Emma in this?" His voice was tight with anger. "She's barely 20, Mom. She doesn't need to be dragged into family business." "I didn't drag her anywhere," I said. "She came because you called her with lies about me." His silence said everything. "Steve," I asked softly, "what's happening to you, to us? Your father would be heartbroken to see this." "Don't bring Dad into it," he snapped. "This is about you refusing to be reasonable." "No," I said, my voice calm but cold. "This is about Olivia's debts and your refusal to see the truth." He hung up without another word. That night, sleep wouldn't come. I walked the perimeter of the farmhouse, checking every door and window. The air felt thick, like even the walls were listening. In the study, I opened James's old gun cabinet and lifted out the shotgun he'd taught me to use decades ago for snakes and coyotes. I checked the barrel loaded, then placed it back carefully. Not for animals this time, but for protection from a different kind of threat. The kind that wears a smile, calls you family, and waits for you to let your guard down. For the first time in my life, I was afraid in my own home. The first cool hint of autumn touched the morning air as I gathered eggs from the hen house. 3 months had passed since the so-called family meeting, 3 months of quiet battles and whispered rumors. Steve now called only to argue. David had withdrawn completely. Nancy and my brother Mark had taken Olivia's side, convinced I was being stubborn and unreasonable. I spent those months documenting everything, keeping a journal of every call, every visit. On Martha's advice, I even recorded certain conversations. She assured me it was legal in Tennessee. Still, the isolation was wearing me down. I was lost in thought when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. A truck. I tensed until I recognized it. The faded blue Ford that had belonged to Harold Jenkins, Harold James's best friend since grade school. I hadn't seen him much since the funeral. Harold Jenkins had moved to Nashville years ago to practice law, so seeing his old blue Ford pull into my driveway that morning caught me completely off guard. "Melissa Holloway," he called, climbing out of the truck with a familiar groan that spoke of old knees and older memories. "Still the earliest riser in the county, I see." Despite everything, I smiled. "Harold, what brings you back to these parts?" He glanced around the farm. The sturdy fences, the freshly painted barn, the fields stretching toward the hills. "Heard some troubling news from Marcus down at the casino?" he said quietly. "Thought I should check on you." My stomach tightened. Marcus, James's cousin, the same man who'd first told me about Olivia's gambling. "You'd better come inside," I said. At the kitchen table, Harold refused coffee but accepted a glass of water. He'd aged, more gray in his beard, deeper lines around his eyes, but his gaze was sharp as ever. "Marcus says your daughter-in-law is in deep," he said. 30, maybe 40,000. I inhaled sharply. "That much?" He told me she was gambling, but not the amounts. Harold nodded grimly. "It's been getting worse. Last weekend she was there until dawn trying to win it back." Does Steve know? Don't think so, he said. She's been careful, using cash, separate accounts. He hesitated, then leaned forward. But that's not all I heard. Word is there's talk about having you declared legally unfit. A few people have been asking questions around the courthouse. Even though I'd suspected as much, hearing it confirmed made my heart drop. On what grounds? Grief, he said. Confusion, poor judgment, the usual nonsense people claim when they want to take control of someone's property. I pushed back from the table and began pacing the worn linoleum floor. I've been so blind, Harold. I thought they'd give up eventually. I thought Steve would see through her. You're not blind, he said gently. You're just someone who still expects the best from family. James was the same way. The sound of my husband's name brought a lump to my throat. What would he do if he were here? I asked softly. Harold's voice was calm but steady. He'd fight. I looked up, meeting his eyes. Then that's what I'll do. I'm done being pushed around. For the first time in months, Harold smiled, the same warm grin I remembered from our wedding day when he'd stood beside James as best man. That's what I came here to hear, he said, and I'm going to help you. Over the next few hours, we built a plan. Harold's background in elder law gave him insight into every trick Olivia and Steve might try and how to stop them. First, he said, scribbling notes in his leather notebook, we'll have an independent specialist in Nashville document your competency. Someone with no local ties. That'll end any rumors before they start. I nodded, relief mixing with gratitude. Second, we protect the property itself. I know Martha handled your will, but we should also move the farm into a living trust. That'll make it nearly impossible to contest. What about Emma? I asked. I don't want her dragged into this. She's the rightful heir, Harold said. At some point she'll need to know, but we'll make sure she's protected. As the day went on, something returned to me, something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. We worked through dinner, talking about old days with James, laughing about the time he and Harold had accidentally set fire to the haystack during their bonfire experiment. By the time the sky turned purple and fireflies appeared, I felt lighter than I had in ages. When Harold stood to leave, I offered him the guest room, but he shook his head. I've got a room in town. I'll be close by for a few days, getting things set up. He paused at the door, his expression turning serious. Mel, be careful. People do desperate things when money's on the line. After he left, I sat on the porch, watching the shadows stretch across the fields. Having an ally again gave me strength, but his warning echoed in my mind long after the crickets started their nightly song. The next morning, I drove into town. The first time in weeks. The whispers started before I even reached the counter at the hardware store. I could feel the eyes on me. Poor Mrs. Holloway, someone murmured. Losing touch. Shame about that farm. I kept my chin high, loaded the supplies into my truck, and reminded myself that dignity was the best armor. That's when I heard a familiar voice. Melissa! I turned to see Pastor Williams walking toward me, his kind face lined with concern. Good to see you. We've missed you at church. I forced a small smile. Been busy with the farm. You know how it is. He nodded, but I saw hesitation in his eyes. Olivia mentioned you've been struggling, he said carefully. The prayer group's been concerned. I froze. Did she now? And what exactly did she say I was struggling with? The pastor looked uncomfortable. Just grief, adjusting, making a few questionable decisions. Like not selling my home to pay off her debts? The words escaped before I could stop them. Pastor Williams blinked. I don't know anything about that. No, I suppose she didn't mention that during her prayer requests, I said softly. He looked startled and I sighed, softening my tone. Pastor, I appreciate your concern, but I'm fine. What I'm struggling with isn't grief. It's people who want what doesn't belong to them. He nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. When I returned to the farm later that afternoon, a car was parked in my driveway. A silver sedan, rental plates. Someone was waiting for me. For a moment, fear gripped me. Then the driver's door opened, and relief washed through me when I saw Emma step out, waving. "Surprise!" she called. "I got a few days off from my research project." I hurried down the steps and pulled her into a hug. "What a wonderful surprise," I whispered. Inside, while we unpacked groceries, I noticed her cheerful energy fade. "Grandma," she said softly, "Uncle Steve called me again. He said you've been meeting with lawyers, that you're getting paranoid." I set a can of beans down very carefully. "Did he mention why I might need a lawyer?" She shook her head. "Emma," I asked, "what did your dad always tell you about family, about trust?" Her eyes softened at the mention of Michael. "He said trust has to be earned, not demanded, and that actions speak louder than words." Hearing James's wisdom echoed through our son, and now through our granddaughter brought tears to my eyes. "Your Uncle Steve and Aunt Olivia want the farm," I said quietly. "They're trying to have me declared unfit to get it." Emma's eyes widened. "They can't do that." "They can try," I said. "But I'm fighting back, sweetheart, and I could use your help." We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where James and I had shared countless meals. I told her everything. Olivia's gambling, the family's attempts to isolate me, Harold's plan to secure the farm and my independence. When I finished, Emma's face was pale but determined. "What do you need me to do?" Looking at her across that table, I saw 3 generations of Holloways: my father-in-law who built the land up, James who modernized it, Michael who loved every acre, and now Emma, ready to defend it. "Stand with me," I said simply. Her hand closed around mine. "Always, Grandma," she said. "Always." The notice came the next Tuesday. Bold black letters across the top of official stationery: competency evaluation, Dr. Elaine Gregory. Date: Monday, 10:04 a.m. Location: Holloway Farm, on-site assessment. My hands trembled as I read it. Harold had warned this could happen, but seeing it in print made my pulse quicken. "They didn't waste any time," I muttered, grabbing the phone. Harold answered on the second ring. "They've scheduled a competency evaluation," I said. "Here, at the farm." He exhaled sharply. "That's faster than I expected and unusual. These things are normally done in a clinic. Let me make some calls." Within hours, Harold arrived with my attorney, Martha Ellis. The look on their faces told me everything. "Dr. Gregory," Martha said, spreading papers across the table, "has testified in dozens of estate cases, and she works closely with a certain law firm that handles property transfers." "Let me guess," I said bitterly. "The same firm Steve and Olivia hired." Harold nodded. "Exactly. This isn't an evaluation, Melissa. It's a setup." "What can we do?" Martha reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "We already did. I filed a motion this morning contesting the evaluation for conflict of interest. We're demanding an independent doctor approved by both sides." Harold added, "And until that happens, we keep documenting everything. I've brought in a private investigator to look deeper into Olivia's gambling. And I've arranged for our own specialist from Vanderbilt to evaluate you first. We'll have solid evidence before Monday." I nodded, overwhelmed by gratitude and by the sheer scale of what was unfolding. "What about Emma?" I asked. "I don't want her dragged into this mess." "Emma's an adult," Martha said gently, "and she's the named heir. She'll have to be part of it eventually, but we'll protect her." Almost on cue, my phone buzzed. Emma's name lit up the screen. "Everything okay, Grandma? You sound stressed." I hesitated, then remembered our promise to be honest. "They're moving forward with trying to have me declared unfit," I said quietly. I heard her gasp. "I'm coming this weekend. I'll bring my roommate Jen. She's pre-law and her mom's a judge. Maybe she can help." After we hung up, Harold, Martha, and I went back to planning. Documents, witness lists, timelines. Our kitchen table had turned into a war room. Then Harold said softly, "There's one more thing, Mel. We need to talk about Steve." My chest tightened. "What about him?" "The investigator found something concerning," Harold said. "Steve's been meeting with real estate developers. They've already drawn up preliminary plans for subdividing the property residential lots, Cul-de-sacs, the whole thing. The words hit like a blow, not just selling the farm but destroying it, turning the orchard where James and I had picnicked into driveways and swimming pools. Martha spoke carefully. "There's no signature yet, Melissa, but the intent is clear." That night, after they left, I walked the perimeter of the property. The sun was setting, painting the fields in gold. I tried to imagine rows of identical houses standing where wildflowers now grew, and felt something inside me harden. Sleep never came. Around midnight, headlights swept across my bedroom wall as a vehicle pulled into the driveway. I froze, heart pounding. I froze as headlights swept across my bedroom wall. Harold's words echoed in my mind. People get desperate when money's involved. I grabbed my robe and the baseball bat I kept beside the bed, then moved quietly to the front door. Through the peephole, I saw a familiar figure standing on my porch, swaying slightly in the light. Steve. I cracked the door open, keeping the bat in hand. "Mom," he said, his voice thick and unsteady. He'd been drinking something he rarely did. "Can I come in?" I hesitated, then stepped aside. He stumbled past me and dropped heavily onto the sofa, the same spot where he'd watched cartoons as a little boy. "Why are you here, Steve?" "It's after midnight." He rubbed his face. "They called off the evaluation. Your lawyer, Martha, she threatened to expose something. I don't know what, but Olivia's furious." I lowered the bat, but didn't sit. "Good," I said simply. He looked up, his eyes red. "Is it true? About Olivia? Gambling?" I studied his face. The worry lines, the exhaustion. My son looked older than his years. "Yes," I said softly. "She's deep in debt, Steve. That's what all of this is about. Not concern for me, not family unity, just money." He flinched like I'd struck him. "She says you're making it up," he muttered. "That you're trying to turn me against her because you've always hated her." "Do you believe that?" He didn't answer, and that silence told me everything. "Steve," I said quietly, "I never hated Olivia. I've been disappointed in her choices, yes, but this isn't about feelings. It's about the truth." He stood suddenly and began pacing, his agitation filling the room. "You don't understand. The business is failing, and now with her debts we're drowning. We needed a solution. So you decided to take my home," I said evenly, "to have me declared unfit." "It wasn't supposed to be like that," he protested. "At first we just wanted you to sell the property. The legal part came after you refused." "And the developers?" I asked. "The plans to subdivide the farm?" His head snapped up, eyes wide. "How did you—" "I have people looking out for me too, Steve. Did you really think I'd just roll over and let you take everything your father and I built?" He sank back onto the sofa, head in his hands. "I didn't want it to come to this," he whispered. "Neither did I said. The clock in the hallway ticked, each second a reminder of how far apart we'd grown. Finally, he spoke. "What happens now?" "That depends on you," I replied. "This can still end quietly before it becomes lawyers, courts, and embarrassment for everyone involved." "How?" "Tell Olivia it's over. The farm isn't for sale now or ever, and I want a full accounting of her debts, all of them, by the end of the week." He looked up sharply. "Why would you want that?" "Because, despite everything, you're my son," I said softly, "and I don't want to watch you get destroyed by her mistakes." His phone buzzed, Olivia's name flashing on the screen. He silenced it without answering. "If I do this," he said slowly, "what guarantees do I have that you won't use it against her?" "Against us?" "You have my word," I said. "And unlike some promises in this family, mine still means something." He paused at the door, looking smaller somehow, his shoulders heavy. "I need time to think." "Don't take too long," I warned gently. "My lawyers are moving forward with their investigation. Once that starts, I can't stop it." He nodded once, then disappeared into the night. I sat there in the dark living room, the air thick with memories. It wasn't the victory I'd hoped for, but it was something. A crack in their armor. A moment of doubt in Steve's unwavering loyalty to Olivia. The next morning, I called Harold to tell him what happened. "Be careful, Mel," he said gravely. "Desperate people do desperate things. This could be a trick to make you drop your guard." "He's still my son," I whispered. "Yes," Harold said, "but right now he's also your opponent. Don't forget that." By Friday, the house was full again, this time with allies. Emma and her roommate Jen arrived that morning, arms full of files and coffee cups. Jen was sharp, quick-talking, and confident, the kind of young woman who could stand toe-to-toe with any lawyer. Their energy filled the house with something I hadn't felt in months: momentum. We spread documents across the dining table: contracts, letters, recordings. For once, I wasn't alone. That's when I heard the sound of tires on gravel. Emma glanced up, her eyes narrowing. Through the window I saw it, Olivia's sleek SUV gliding up the driveway. "Showtime," Emma murmured. I squared my shoulders and opened the door before she could knock. Olivia stood there, perfectly styled as always, but I could see the tightness in her expression, the way her jaw flexed when she smiled. "Melissa," she said coolly, "we need to talk." "Come in," I replied, stepping aside. Her eyes flicked toward the dining table where Emma and Jen sat surrounded by papers and legal books. "I'd prefer to speak privately," she said sharply. "Anything you have to say to me," I said, "can be said in front of my granddaughter." Olivia's gaze hardened, but she followed me into the living room, settling on the edge of the armchair as if afraid to touch anything. "Steve told me about your little conversation," she began, "about your accusations." "They're not accusations," I said evenly. "They're facts. And Harold's investigator has confirmed every one of them." For the first time, her composure slipped. Just for a heartbeat, panic flashed across her face before indignation took its place. "You're investigating me?" she demanded. "How dare you?" "How dare I?" I repeated calmly, meeting her eyes. "After everything you've done." "You tried to have me declared unfit," I said, my voice steady. "You planned to take my home, divide it, and sell it to cover your gambling debts, and now you ask how dare I?" Olivia leaned forward, her voice dropping to a sharp whisper. "You have no idea what you're talking about. I don't have gambling debts." From the dining room, Emma's voice rang out clear and unwavering. "We have the records, Aunt Olivia. Dates, amounts, everything." Olivia froze. Then, slowly, she straightened, smoothing her skirt with trembling hands. "What do you want?" she demanded. "Money? Is this blackmail?" "What I want," I said quietly, "is peace. I want to live on the land that belongs to me, without being treated like an obstacle to be removed." "Fine," she snapped. "Keep your precious farm. Rot here alone if that's what you want. But don't expect Steve to keep visiting after the way you've treated us." I smiled, a calm, steady smile that came from somewhere deep inside. "That's up to Steve," I said, "and something tells me he'll see things differently. Once he knows the truth." Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then stood abruptly. "This isn't over, Melissa." "Yes, it is," I replied, following her to the door. I watched her march to her car, heels striking the gravel, her composure cracking like thin glass. As she drove away, Emma slipped her arm around my waist. "You okay, Grandma?" she asked softly. I nodded and realized it was true. "I am." The next morning, another knock came. Steve alone this time stood on the porch, looking exhausted and older than I remembered. I invited him in for coffee. We sat at the same kitchen table where he'd eaten cereal as a boy. "I found the casino statements," he said quietly, "hidden in a box in the attic, almost $40,000. Mom, how could I have been so blind?" My heart ached for him. "We see what we want to see in the people we love," I said gently. He shook his head. "Dad would be so disappointed in me." "No," I said firmly. "Your father would understand. He always believed in second chances." Steve looked up, his eyes searching mine. "Do you?" I took a moment before answering. "I do, but second chances have to be earned. Trust doesn't come back easily." He nodded slowly. "I've canceled the competency evaluation for good. And I told the developers, the farm's not for sale. Not now, not ever. That's a start, I said, managing a faint smile. He reached into his jacket and handed me a folded document. There's something else, something I should have shown you weeks ago. I unfolded the paper, a preliminary medical report. Olivia's been diagnosed, he said softly. Gambling addiction, mood disorder. She's been struggling for years. It got worse after her father died. She refused help. I kept covering for her. And when the debts grew too big, you turned to the farm, I finished gently. He nodded miserably. She's agreed to treatment now, a 30-day program in Nashville. I'm glad, I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, I wouldn't wish that kind of battle on anyone. I'll stay with David while she's gone, he said. I don't know what happens next, but I needed you to know. I reached across the table and took his hand. One day at a time, Steve. That's all any of us can do. Later that day, I walked the farm with Emma. I showed her the old oak tree where James and I had carved our initials 60 years ago, the pond where Michael had taught her to fish as a child, the hilltop that offered the best view of the sunset. This will all be yours someday, I told her softly. Not just the land, but the responsibility that comes with it. I know, she said, her voice steady. I won't let you down, Grandma, or Grandpa, or Dad. I squeezed her hand, feeling tears threaten but holding them back. I know you won't, sweetheart. The months that followed brought healing slow, uneven, but real. Olivia completed her program and began attending weekly support meetings. Steve and I rebuilt our relationship piece by piece, this time with honesty and boundaries. David returned, bringing his kids to help with the harvest. Harold stayed in touch, checking in often, his friendship a constant comfort. And Emma came home every school break, eager to learn everything she could about the land that would one day be hers. A year after that first family meeting, I hosted another gathering, a harvest dinner on the wide farmhouse porch. Harold was there, and Martha. Emma and her friend Jen set the table. David came with his wife and children. Even Nancy and Mark showed up, looking sheepish but welcome. Steve arrived last, alone. Olivia had moved to Florida to be near her sister, their marriage, another casualty of the past year's events. But Steve looked lighter somehow, freer. As the sun set over the golden fields, we gathered around a long wooden table filled with food grown on our land. I rose, glass in hand. To this land, I said, which has carried us through good times and bad, to those who are gone, but never forgotten. My voice caught as I thought of James, of Michael, of the love and labor that built everything we saw around us. And to the future, I continued, which will stay bright as long as we remember what truly matters. Glasses lifted all around me. To the land, they echoed. Later, as stars appeared above the fields, Emma joined me on the porch swing. You did it, Grandma, she said softly. You saved the farm. I smiled. We saved it, sweetheart. And more than that, we saved our family, or at least began to. She was quiet for a moment. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd sold it? Sometimes, I admitted. But then I remember what your grandfather always said. This land isn't just soil and trees. It's our past and our future, all in one place. Emma leaned her head on my shoulder, just like when she was little. I'm going to take care of it, Grandma. I promise. I know you will, I whispered. I've never doubted that. The next morning, I woke before dawn, like I had most of my life. Pulling on my boots, I walked out to the highest hill on our property, where James and I used to watch the sunrise. The eastern sky began to glow, pink and gold stretching across the horizon. I thought of everything this land had seen, birth and loss, betrayal and forgiveness, love and redemption, and through it all it had endured steady and faithful, like the people who'd tended it for generations. As the first rays of sunlight broke over the hills, I felt James beside me. Not a ghost, but a quiet, comforting presence in the morning breeze. We did it, Mel. I could almost hear him say. We kept our promise. This land is ours. Forever. Forever, I whispered back, as the new day rose bright and full of promise over the land of my ancestors, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt completely at peace.